we have the Washington Wizards selecting Darren Peterson out of Kansas University. He's somebody who can put up a lot of points for you. I went back and looked at a lot of the film between him and AJ, and he's been getting the best of AJ, just looking at their past games in high school, especially this year in January when they went to play against each other. And I think Darren Peterson only played the first half, and he just went at him, whether that was on the wing, getting downhill. He's just a big-time shot maker, and the kind of role he had, I know he wants to play a lot of on-ball reps in the NBA, a little bit of that point guard position, or, be seen as a point guard. Anthony Edwards, Devin Booker are a few of the players I believe he compared himself to. But this year at Kansas, he played an off-ball role, similar to like a Brad Bill type or a Ray Allen type, somebody, who can catch and shoot off, make plays off the dribble for you, but, they don't primarily act as a, your playmaker. So I like to see Darren Peterson with more on-ball reps. I think he's that talented of a scorer, that talented of a basketball player. So yeah, I really like this pick for Washington. I think he fits their personnel. Looking at what other players they have there, Alex Sarr, obviously AD. Trae Young just declined his option. I think he's going to sign a longer deal. And then you got Trey Johnson, somebody who can shoot the ball for you. Will Riley, Bilal Coulibaly. So, you have some talent there, and I think Darren Peterson can be your answer in the backcourt at this position. So moving on, you have the Utah Jazz selecting their guy, AJ Debinsa out of BYU. Somebody you can't miss as a prospect, somebody who has excellent footwork. He just finds a way to get out of most situations when you think he's stuck, or he just has really advanced footwork for this both sides of the ball. So AJ is a can't miss prospect. He doesn't fall below 2 in any draft, any mock draft. Moving on, we have the Memphis Grizzlies selecting Cam Boozer. And Cam Boozer is probably the safest pick of the three, just because we know what he's done in high school, winning all those championships, what he's done at Duke, averaging a double-double, just being consistent. And he comes into Memphis right next to Zach Edey, somebody who can help him be a better big in terms of Cam Boozer being a playmaking big himself, Cam Boozer being able to space the floor. He played on the perimeter a lot at Duke, so he's going to be very versatile for you, and he's going to fit into what the rest of that team brings in Jalen Wells and Cedric Howard. And then they have a pick later in the draft where they can help either the backcourt or just getting the most talented player available. Moving on, next up you have the Chicago Bulls selecting Caleb Wilson out of North Carolina. And I think if he was just a little bit more developed, I know he came onto basketball late, he could have maybe even been in conversation for that one pick. At times he's been mocked as high as 2, but I do think he has the kind of talent, the kind of motor, the kind of length that you look for in a basketball prospect, being 6'9", having fluid mobility, being able to knock down shots somewhat, compete. You're what most GMs look for, Caleb Wilson. So Chicago takes this pick here. They, restart their franchise. Hopefully they can get some pieces out and, really embrace this youth movement. Let guys play a lot to figure out what they have. Rob Dillingham, already having Josh Giddey there, Colin Sexton. So yeah, Chicago has a lot of answers to make, but luckily for them, they also have a pick at 15 to help their youth movement. Moving on, you have the Clippers selecting Braden Burries out of the University of Arizona. Now, he's an older freshman. He doesn't look like a freshman, but it makes sense. No slight to him. But, that whatever year he spent, I guess, an extra year in high school has definitely paid off in terms of working on his body, being able to come in right away and be effective for Arizona. He was someone that fit into a bigger play style. You look at his ability to shoot off the dribble and, making most of his three-pointers off the dribble as opposed to just being a set shooter. You definitely like that because, in the NBA, you want guys who can make plays for themselves as well as others and not just be quote-unquote robots. So Braden Burries is a special prospect. He can guard multiple positions for you. And I think he's a safe pick here. I know a lot of people have been mocking Mikael Brown out of Louisville to go to the Clippers, but I think ultimately it's going to come down to Braden Burries' ability to play on both ends of the ball, what he's done on a winning team in Arizona, and again, Ty Lue has quote-unquote fell in love with him. So moving on, you have the Brooklyn Nets selecting Nate Ament out of the University of Tennessee, and they go here because when you look back at their draft of last year, selecting Igor Dimen with their first pick, I believe it was the 8th pick, but you have Nate Ament being somebody who's a 6'9" wing, and he's going to be the most talented prospect you're going to get. I think last year they kind of surprised a lot of people when they took Igor Dimen, and I think they're going to do the same thing here. I know a lot of people have Darius Acuff going here, but I think you take what the NBA looks for in terms of, again, that size. You already have Igor Dimen there, and then you select a ton of guards. Let's not give up on those guys too quick. Let's give them a chance. Nolan Traore had a lot of paint touches. You also had Ben Seraph. You had Drake Powell, who's a 3-and-D guard for you. Igor Denham was playing point, but I think he's better suited as an off-ball wing. So yeah, I think you take best upside if you're the Brooklyn Nets, and I think Nate Ament is your guy. Moving on, you have the Sacramento Kings selecting Darius Acuff out of University of Arkansas. When you look at all the guards that Coach Kyle's produced, from John Wall, Derrick Rose, Tyrese Maxey, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Devin Booker. When you look at Darius Acuff, just having the swagger of a leader, that's somebody you want to take with your franchise. Somebody who can shoot the ball really well, somebody who can play make for you. It sounds like he's owning up to his defensive assignments, and you want that. You don't want guys high. Once you reach a certain point in the NBA, in terms of production, star power, they find a way to make you to hide you on defense. They find a way to make you coexist with a really good defense around you. So coming out, you really got to prove yourself in guard, and I think Darius Acuff is going to try his best to do that. A lot of people is seeing him as a small guard, but I think he'll be fine. I think he has a +4 wingspan. Yeah, I think he'll be suited in the right positions. And Sacramento needs somebody with a little grit and grind. And I want to say somebody of the Sacramento Kings is from Detroit, Michigan, and they know his dad. I want to say it's maybe Scott Perry. I heard it on the interview. So yeah, I think Darius Acuff doesn't fall past 7 in this mock draft. We have the Atlanta Hawks selecting Mikael Brown out of Louisville. Mikael Brown is somebody who can play either guard position for you. When you look at CJ McCollum and what he's done for the Hawks, being able to lead those guys into the first round of the playoffs where they lost 4-2 against the Knicks. Mikael can pretty much shadow up under CJ until he's ready to become that long-term starter. CJ McCollum, being able to do some things off the dribble for you, being able to be a catch-and-shoot shooter for you. Looking at CJ when he played in Portland, he was your 2 guard. Now he's seen as a point, and Mikael is seen as a 1 or a 2. In Team USA, he's played a lot of 1. In Louisville, he played some 2. So I think CJ is the perfect guy to learn under the perfect pro, perfect professional, great locker room guy, and Mikael's been interviewing well. So I think Mikael obviously goes top 10 in this draft, top 8 at worst. Moving on, you got the Dallas Mavericks selecting Keaton Wagler out of the University of Illinois, and we know the whole story about him being 150 or top 150 ranked in his high school class to being pretty much a confirmed top 10 pick, getting a green room invite from the NBA. And Keaton Wagler is somebody just like Mikael Brown who can play with or without the ball, being somebody who's a little bit more crafty. They see him in that Steph Curry mode and Davidson, being mysterious. But he made a lot of shots in March Madness when we watched him, having crafty footwork, making plays around the rim. So I think Keaton Wagler will definitely be towards the 3rd or 4th guard taken in the draft. Moving on, you have the Milwaukee Bucks selecting Kingston Fleming of the University of Houston. There's been a lot of flack about what he can do in terms of shooting. He's come a long way from high school to now with his jump shot, especially emerging as Houston's best freshman, their best player, especially when they had higher recruits like Chris Sinak, who's come in and was ranked higher than Kingston Fleming. But he emerged as their leader and was their most consistent player all year. And I think he's going to prove a lot of people wrong and probably end up being this draft class top 3 best guards. I think that show his maturity, that show his will system that work, and just last throughout the season. I remember watching a lot of games this season. He just had that mid-range pull-up that he went to ultimately. Like, he just got to his spots, and that's what pros do. He looked like a pro the entire season. When they lost in the tournament, you can tell he really took it personal. So I think Kingston Fleming is the kind of guy that you want in your locker room. Moving on, you have the Golden State Warriors selecting Dai Mara out of the University of Michigan. I want to say he's a junior. Yeah, he's a junior coming out of Michigan. I think if you're Golden State, you don't let this guy pass your draft pick if he's available, just because he's somebody who's big, he's mobile. You can get him on a rookie contract, obviously, and have him for a few years as Steph Curry contract, ends, and he's on his way out. I think he just fits their current timeline and obviously their long-term timeline, and then he fits what the NBA is currently doing with their bigs. When you think about Victor Wembanyama, think of Chet, so yeah, guarding guys who are a tad bit bigger. I think you're going to need that guy if you're Golden State, especially when you think about the old guys you have in Al Horford, Kristaps Porzingis, etc. Moving on, you got the Oklahoma City Thunder selecting Morris Johnson Adai Morris, teammate out of the University of Michigan. He's somebody who can play the 3, 4, and maybe even some 5 for you, some small ball 5. But he's very versatile. He showed well at the combine. You know, he really contributed well to that Michigan championship team. And I think when you think about OKC and, you know, the absence of J-Dub, you know, Chet having to share minutes there, Kenrich Williams not having the biggest role as he did this run, as he did in the previous seasons, I think you want to go ahead and bolster your front court and add somebody like Morez Johnson who can do a little bit of everything for you, and he can grow with this team. He can play with Chet, he can play with J-Dub, he can play in substitution for those guys. So yeah, he's very versatile, and I think you just go with that selection here. Moving on, you have the Miami Heat selecting Yaxel Lindenborg. So we have the 3 Michigan guys going back to back to back out of the University of Michigan, and he fits into their win now situation. I think Miami's going to make a trade this season or this offseason finally. So I think Yaxel Lindenborg gives them the most leverage when you think about negotiating and what a guy can do for you right now. I think Yaxel Lindenborg gives them the most flexibility, you know, over guys who are still on the board, just because he's more seen of a sure thing prospect, you know, being a good rebounder, being able to shoot the ball well for you, being able to guard. And that's what the NBA wants, you know, good role players with size. Moving on, you have the Charlotte Hornets selecting Kareem Lopez out of Mexico. He's going to be the highest drafted Mexican prospect. So Kareem Lopez is somebody who's going to bring some front court presence to the Hornets, going to give them a little bit of isolation scoring on the wing, something I think they don't really have as much when you look at Miles Bridges, who's a cutter, you know, a screen setter, he can spot up for you. And then you have Brandon Miller, who's seen as more of like a guard wing, Conklin Nipple, who's seen more as a, you know, a shooter for you. So I think Kareem Lopez is going to give this team just a little bit of optionality at the 4 position, bringing something different to the table. And he's going to be set up by LaMelo. He's going to be able to fit that role, play with Moussa Diabate. Yeah, so I like what Kareem Lopez can do in Charlotte. Moving on, you have the Chicago Bulls selecting Cameron Carr out of Baylor, somebody who put up 30 points at the NBA Combine, somebody who's going to be a shot maker for your team. And I think he fits well when you look at what the Chicago Bulls have. They're going to select Caleb Wilson, Cameron Carr, and I think they're going to be enough veteran bigs on the market to go ahead and just get somebody to fill that void for you now. But I think you get somebody long-term who can really make shots next to Caleb Wilson and help him grow. I think you need the most talent if you're Chicago, and I think this is the biggest swing out on the board in terms of the forwards and not getting another guard as to what you don't need. Moving on, you have the Memphis Grizzlies selected LeBaron Fallon out of the University of Alabama, and he's going to fit into that point guard role perfectly. I think that's Cedric Coward, Jalen Wells, Cam Boozer, and now Zach Edey. We saw how fluid he was at Alabama with the ball in his hands, being able to make plays for others, being able to shoot well off the ball. The question is about his frame. He's only 180 pounds, but I think he can add to that frame. You know, John Morant isn't the biggest guy, so we see that they aren't afraid to take, you know, that archetype. But LeBaron Fallon is definitely the guy to come in and, you know, fill that void at point guard if there was to be a Ja Morant trade. Moving on, you have Jaden Quaintance being selected by the OKC Thunder. They just want to add to their front court. Isaiah Hartenstein has a team option this summer for about $25 million. So they want to go ahead and get a rookie here and just get somebody on a cheaper deal that they can rely on down the line. He still rehab for his ACL, but he can come in and play that center next to Chet. He can come in and hopefully play next to J-Dub. So Jaden Quaintance is the pick here. Next, we have the Charlotte Hornets selecting Heinen Steinbach out of the University of Washington, and they're looking just to add more center depth. This kind of has a smaller frame, and Heinen Steinbach can be that mobile center for you, kind of like a Mo Wagner. Come in, set screens, somebody who can roll hard, make plays in the mid-range, mid-post, and just somebody who can just bring size to your front court. Next up, we have the Toronto Raptors selecting Christian Anderson out of Texas Tech University, and they're a team that desperately needs shooting, and he's arguably one of the best shooters in this draft. Somebody who works well off of screens, and when you look at the way the Toronto Raptors play, having all those forwards who just come off of screens and kind of have a lot of versatility when you think about who's operating the handoffs, except like having Scotty Barnes there, Colin Murray Boyles. So I think Christian Anderson fits right into their system, being able to come off of dribble handoffs, make threes, get downhill, make kicks, etc. Next up, we have the San Antonio Spurs selecting Chris Sinak out of the University of Houston. Kristaps is somebody who can come in and play next to Wemby. He has that Evan Mobley archetype, that Jaren Jackson build, somebody who fits what the modern NBA is looking for, you know, being 6'10", having a long wingspan, being mobile, who can guard out on the perimeter, guard down low. And I think he fits next to Wemby just for those reasons alone. And I just think on the development side of things, he has to develop his body, get better as a shooter. But I think right now his calling card is definitely his defense, and that's what you need next to Wemby, especially how we saw them go out in the finals. You know, not having somebody at that 4 spot, relying on Carter Bryant, relying on 3 guards, and you'll have Devin Vassell at your 4 next to Wemby. So yeah, let's add some size to that front court if you're San Antonio. Next up, we have the Detroit Pistons selecting Ibuka Okoro out of Stanford, and he was a guy who came onto the scene late playing for Stanford, but he got a lot of paint touches, being creative as a ball handler. A lot of people compare him to Dennis Schroeder. He looks really good as a lead guard, but I think that could somewhat be his downfall. You know, being a smaller guard, you kind of want those guys to be versatile enough to do some things off ball for you, not completely rely on, you know, player usage and having the ball 100% of the time. So I like what he does with the ball in his hand. I would like to see what he can do it without it a little bit more, but I think when you're the Detroit Pistons, you can take any offense in the backcourt right now next to Cade. So moving on, we have the 76ers selecting Dalen Swain out of the University of Texas. And Swain is a guy who can do a lot of things defensively for you, Garmo. The biggest question about Dalen Swain right now is his ability to shoot. And when you look at the 76ers, they got guys like Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, who can shoot. Obviously, Joel Embiid, who's a very talented center who can do a lot of things on the perimeter. I think Dalen Swain can fit into that offense and kind of operate, get into the paint, and then make kicks for others. So he works there. He's somebody who can guard, you know, multiple positions, 2 through 4. Very athletic. So I think Dalen Swain is the pick here. At pick 23, we have the Atlanta Hawks selecting Henry Vassar out of the University of North Carolina. They definitely need some size in their front court, having guys like Onyeka Okongwu, having a rookie in Asa Newell. And after that, like, they don't really have any centers. Thinking none are really coming to mind. So yeah, let's go ahead and add Henry Vassar to the Atlanta Hawks. We have them selecting Mikael Brown earlier in the draft, getting their point guard of the future. So here they have their stretch big who can play next to Okongwu, who can play as a lone center as you run all your wings. Maybe you play a lineup of Zachary at the 4, Kuminga at the 3, and you can have Dyson at the 2, Mikael at the 1, something like that. You know, Vassar is versatile enough, I feel like, to play next to a traditional 4 or, you know, another one. Selecting Allen Graves out of Santa Clara. And he joins the Knicks as somebody who can come in and just fit their system and kind of playing that Karl-Anthony Towns backup 4-5 role. The analytics really support his play style. But I really like when you look at his touch and the quick decisions he made. He plays a little bit slower than you would like. But at Santa Clara, you could just see how smart he played, the shots he made, and just how versatile he was as a big. And if you're New York and you're the champions, I think you want to look for that when you look at Karl-Anthony Towns getting into a lot of foul trouble. Mitchell Robinson potentially on his way out. You definitely want to grab another big and add him to your front court. Moving on, you have the Los Angeles Lakers selecting Terrence Reed out of UConn. And Terrence Reed is projected in most drafts to go anywhere from like 25 to the second round. I really like him out of UConn. He isn't your traditional jump and rim running big. He's a bit more of your, I guess, grit and grind big. He's going to, you know, back you to the basket a little bit, give himself a better look. You know, we know that if you're in that UConn system, you're going to do more than just play your position. You're going to be able to do the things the NBA look for. And I think he does that, you know, being able to pass, being a really good defender, being solid, being strong, knowing when to jump, when to move his feet. Center, probably whatever team having. We know they've been having shooting problems as well, but I say let's go ahead and get them a solid backup center on a small contract. I think you can find that and you can work with that a little bit more than finding a shooter. We saw the problems that they had with Dalton Connect, and I think he's still worth looking into. So let's go ahead and get Terrence Reed. The Denver Nuggets select Isaiah Evans with this pick, and he's somebody who can just play well off of Jokic, being somebody who can make shots. He's took about 7 threes a year this year at Duke, playing behind Concanipple his freshman season, now playing as a starter next to Cam Boozer and going on that run, being that leader, calming the team down when he needed. I think he fits into, you know, that championship team that Denver has and their core, and just being somebody who can play either with that starting unit, you know, on that bench unit. You know, he's a shooter, so he fits well being able to stretch the floor. He's done that 2 seasons at Duke, all throughout high school. So at pick 26, you can't go wrong. Moving on, you have the Boston Celtics selecting Malik Thomas out of the University of Arkansas. A lot of people only know about Darius Acuff, but Malik Thomas is just as talented. When you look at when Darius Acuff wasn't there and Malik Thomas' number was called to step up, he was able to do things for himself, make plays off the dribble. He competes, he guards, obviously plays well off of Acuff, so I think that's going to translate to the NBA into whatever role he's into, and he's a bigger guard, so he can guard point guards for you, he can guard some 2s, some 3s, and, you know, again, he competes. So I think at pick 27, we get the Celtics and the potential of Jaylen Brown, you know, leaving town. You want to add to that position and, you know, just kind of add depth there. Moving on, you have the Minnesota Timberwolves selecting Wissler, who can come in and play next to Ant and just spread that floor. He's going to have that skill as soon as he gets to the NBA, being somebody who can shoot the ball for you. And that's what you need next to Anthony Edwards. You know, they have the players who can guard Ayo Dosunmu, Jaden McDaniels. Sturts comes in and he can be a target for Anthony Edwards, make the defense be honest, so that way, you know, you can soften up the defense a little bit for AE, who commands so much attention. Moving on, you have the Cleveland Cavaliers adding to their front court and selecting Koa Pete out of Arizona. He could play next to Jared Allen. He could play next to Evan Mobley. He's someone who's strong, who knows how to play the game well. A lot of people have really moved him a lot further down in their mock drafts just because of his inability to shoot. But if you looked at his season opener where he dropped 30 points, he just knows how to play the game well. Like, it'll be foolish of him to go back to school. I say let's figure it out. A team just has to be willing to let him work. But I think down the line, Koa Pete in a redraft goes a lot higher than what he does on draft night.
With the 30th pick, we have the Dallas Mavericks selecting Joshua Jefferson out of Iowa State. He's someone who can play with Cooper Flagg, be a bigger wing on your perimeter, play the forward position, make plays for others. He's somebody who can do a little bit of everything, being a jack of all trades but a master of none. But when you think about them selecting Keaton Wagler earlier in the draft and then pairing a Joshua Jefferson, somebody who's a bigger wing, a high-level thinker in terms of being a connective piece, being able to make plays for your center, being able to switch on the perimeter, being able to shoot the ball a little bit. You know, you want these kind of guys. And that rounds out our mock draft. So if you made it this far, go ahead and subscribe and like. Thank you guys for supporting. As always, signing out.